Advanced Studio Classroom is on the air. Welcome, everyone, to Advanced, and we talked about in-flight travel yesterday, and today we're going to talk about travel precautions, so stay tuned. Well, we welcome you, and this is one of your panelists, Doris Brome, and also we have some people that you know quite well here. Hazel is with us today. Hello, Hazel.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here.
Hazel, you're quite a traveler. You do quite a bit of traveling.
Yeah, I do, but it seems like I often go to the same places, but that's okay.
It's still travel, isn't it?
It's still traveling.
And we're glad to have you on our panel today. And we also have Howie. Howie, do you like to travel?
I love to travel, Doris. In fact, over the last couple of years, I got to go to Europe, and of course, I'm in Asia now.
So it's fun to travel. But our article today on page 26 in our magazine tells us about travel precautions. Now, to caution somebody means to warn them. And what are precautions, Howie?
Precaution is to warn or caution someone beforehand. So before they travel, here's a warning for everybody.
Well, you know, since a lot of people will be traveling next week over the lunar holidays, it's time to be pre-warned, isn't it?
You're right. You need to be alert.
And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's take a look at page 26, and I think it would be good if we could just read first together. Let's read the first column.
Travel precautions. How to find out if you're heading into harm's way. You've scrimped and saved for years to visit Africa. And now, just weeks before your departure date, violence breaks out after the Kenyan elections. Should you take the risk of going or not? Even travelers who think they're going to a safe place should stay alert. Danger is not confined to faraway and exotic locales. Here are ways to make an informed decision, keep yourself safe, and possibly keep your savings intact if the worst happens. Find on-the-ground reports. Obviously, the most effective way to really know what's happening is talking to people who are there. The key here is geography. Will trouble in Oaxaca affect your trip to Mexico City? News reports don't always pinpoint your vacation spot. Tourism bureaus can be useful. While it's in their interest to lure visitors, it's also in their interest to make sure tourists aren't traveling into harm's way. For more elaborate trips, such as a safari, do the research before you book.
Well, what we're really going to talk about today is how to find out if you're heading into harm's way. Harm's way is a term you hear a lot on the radio and the news these days, Howie.
That's right. We were just talking about this before. And going into harm's way basically means to be in danger. So find out if you're heading into danger.
I think this term is often used by the military. I hear it more with troops going into harm's way or keeping them out of harm's way. That's when I usually hear the term.
Right. Or maybe if the weather's really bad and you want to go out and your parent may warn you, you're just going into harm's way. It's a dangerous situation.
Well, that's true. Sometimes if there's a typhoon, there will be a report that says, don't go out today. But a lot of people go out anyway, and they go into harm's way. Something might harm them or hurt them.
That's right. So anytime you're going into harm's way or if you're in a dangerous situation, you can use this term.
You better find out if you're heading into harm's way. Are you on your way into a danger zone? Well, there's a lot of danger zones in the world today.
There sure are. And this is about traveling. When you travel, you want to go to a safe place, not a danger zone. And we're going to talk to you today about how to avoid those problems.
Well, you know, travel costs more all the time, not only because of fuel, but, you know, the cost of living is going up. So you have to save quite a bit. And we have a good little phrase here. You've scrimped and saved. Have you ever scrimped and saved for anything, Howie?
Oh, definitely. Anytime I want to buy something expensive or I'm planning to buy something expensive, I need to scrimp and save. And that means to manage to live on very little money in order to pay for something. In fact, the word scrimp means to be very economical. It means to carefully spare and carefully save.
Right. You can say, I saved money, but if you have a lot of money, you don't have to scrimp to save it. But some of us don't have that much money, so we have to not buy something. Let's say you don't spend as much on food this month and you don't buy any new clothes. You are scrimping so you can save. It isn't like you have a lot of extra money. Isn't that right?
Right. Some people are aware of that all the time. You know, maybe you're going to go out to eat and they say, oh, that's a little more than I want to pay for food. And so they're always scrimping and hopefully saving for something later.
Mm-hmm. And if you're going to visit Africa or any other country, let's say you live in Asia, you want to go to Europe, you want to go to Australia, go to America, you might have to scrimp and save a little.
Well, traveling is very expensive, so you probably will. You'll want to cut down on other expenses and save up for something special.
And something else to consider is if you go to another country and their currency, the currency exchange could be a lot different. So if you go to England, for example, the pound is very strong, the English pound. So you might need to scrimp and save even more if you're going to England.
Or if you're going to get euro dollars or something else, you have to look at the exchange rate. But let's say you're getting ready to go someplace, and maybe many of you are now, and just a week or so before your departure, something happens, like violence breaks out. Not only in Kenya, but let's say if you're going to Africa and it happens in Kenya, there's always some kind of violence going on over there, then should you risk going?
Wow, that's a difficult question. Of course, our lives might be in danger, and so even if we've saved and we're really looking forward to it, it might not be worth it. So how do you know?
And what would you do, Howie, if that happened to you? They said, oh, they're having these elections in some country, and there's a danger there, and there's police on the street. Would you go anyway or not?
As I was reading this article, I was thinking about how last summer there was that incident between Russia and Georgia. And if I was visiting Russia or Georgia, maybe I would have to leave. Maybe they would evacuate me. Maybe the government would ask me to leave because my life would be in danger. But there's no way I could have known at the time, perhaps.
Well, another thing is not only you might have to leave, you might be an innocent civilian on the street, and you could get shot in what they call crossfire, because you're often seeing civilians getting killed. You might just be there as a tourist, and tourists get killed in some of these things.
Right. So, and we're talking, it could happen almost anywhere. Sometimes violence breaks out. Mm-hmm. Sometimes natural disasters occur. Sometimes a disease. So we have to be very cautious and make some wise choices.
Hazel, you're scaring me. Maybe we shouldn't all travel at Chinese New Year. But even travelers who think they're going to a very safe place, you think, oh, nothing will happen here, you should what?
Well, you need to be informed. That's one thing.
And you need to stay alert when you're there, too.
You need to stay alert if you're already there. And before you leave, you need to be informed so that you know how to make the best decisions you can.
Right. We have to stay alert because danger, according to the article, is not confined to faraway and exotic locales. It can happen anywhere, just like Hazel said.
When I think about places to go, let's say you're going to go down to Sydney, Australia. It's a nice place, but I wouldn't call it as exotic. Like, what if you're going to go to the Himalaya Mountains or Tibet or someplace? Wouldn't that be a little bit more exotic?
I think so. Exotic seems to be a place where
you don't know much about it.
Yeah, you don't know much about it. It's very different than where you live.
A little bit mysterious.
Yeah.
Of course, I think Hawaii is considered an exotic locale, too, because of the Hawaiian dancers and probably places that publicity has made them seem very exotic, right?
A little bit unfamiliar and a little bit mysterious. That's what I usually think of when I think of the word exotic.
Well, it says exotic locales. Now, is that a local place? What about this word locales here?
Locale is another way of saying place or scene, and especially if it's a place that we're talking about already. So here it says confined to faraway and exotic locale. So it's an exotic place or scene.
So in fact, you could say location.
Yeah, I was just thinking of that, Doris. You could use the word location.
Right. probably would say to a location or a locale, a place. Well, here are some ways you can make an informed decision. And like you said that, Hazel, you need to be informed. How do we get informed?
Well, we're going to see different ways to become informed, but one reason is that maybe you can help save the money and not lose all your money if you need to not go or if you need to make a quick getaway or something. So you don't want to lose all that. So how can your savings stay intact? How can you be informed? That's what we're going to find out next.
I think the word intact is an interesting word, to keep your savings intact. What does intact mean here?
Well, I have that word underlined, and it means unchanged or whole. So if you keep your savings intact, it means that you didn't waste your money. It's still there. It's unchanged, that amount you saved.
Sure hard to keep your savings intact these days with all the changing money codes and values and everything else. It's kind of hard to keep money intact, isn't it?
It sure is.
Just go ahead and spend it, Hazel. Don't worry about it. Right? But first thing you have to do here, it tells us, is to find on-the-ground reports. What kind of reports are those?
Well, those are actually reports probably from where you intend to go. And, of course, talking to people there might not be easy, but if you can find some people that actually live in the area that can really tell you what's happening then and or now, it's a good idea.
You might even have to use English.
Oh, that's true.
So, English is a good language, although they don't speak it every place in the other word. But the key to this is actually geography. What do we mean by that?
Well, the key here is geography. You should know where you're going. Will trouble in Oaxaca affect your trip to Mexico City? Because those are two different locations. So if you know the geography of the land you're going to, if you kind of know where the surrounding cities are, if you know the surrounding locales or locations, you'll have a better idea of maybe the situation of that country or that place you're going to.
Right. You could say, well, there's a lot of riots that have broken out in Mexico. Then you say, oh, I better cancel my trip. Well, you find out it's a part of Mexico that's not even near where you're going. So you need to pinpoint your vacation spot.
That's right. But sometimes it says the news reports don't always pinpoint. To pinpoint something is to have an exact place where you know where it is. And you can talk about putting a little pin, stick a pin in a map, and that pinpoints a certain place. But when you hear a news report, it might be a little bit vague because they know that a lot of people don't know where all these little cities are, so they might say Mexico City and not describe the exact place, and perhaps that's where you're headed. That's
right. And if you know your geography, then you'll know, oh, that's not going to affect me, or, oh, wait, that's very close to where I'm going. I better not go. I better change my plans.
So you better check that out, too. That's what you need. You find what are the reports locally. And tourism bureaus can be helpful, but, of course, it's their interest to lure or attract visitors. And so sometimes they might say, well, don't worry about it. Come on anyway, because they want to get your business. That could happen.
It could.
But sometimes they don't know, too.
It's true. They might not know, or they might just want your money. But also they do need to try to keep people out of harm's way. That's part of their responsibility, too.
Out of danger, out of harm's way. But sometimes you want to go to a more elaborate trip, not just going to some city, but you might want to go on something like a safari.
I've been on a safari before.
You have?
Really?
I've been to Africa. I've been to Kenya.
Oh, my goodness. That's exotic.
I've been to what they call the savannah. It's their kind of their wild lands, their wilderness. And a safari is a little adventure where you get to see the animals live. It's not like in a zoo where they're behind a cage or they're enclosed. So you're in a car and you're driving around and you can see them. You can see the animals in their natural habitat.
That sounds like a very elaborate trip to me. Well, did you do any research before you booked your trip for there?
No, because I was glad that I was with people who were very familiar. They were Africans. So it was more of a surprise. They're like, oh, let's go here. Like, oh, okay.
Really?
But I think if I were to go on my own, I would need to do a lot of research first.
Before you book here doesn't mean before you read a book. It means before you ding piao, before you decide to make your reservation.
Right, before you actually pay or make a deposit on your reservation, before you book something. Sometimes you can book tickets for maybe a play or maybe a train or something. So
A movie you can book tickets for.
Make
So,
reservations.
to book is a good word to know.
I guess they write it down in a book, or at least they used to. Now they put it on a computer.
That's right.
But they used to write it down in a book. Okay, here's this reservation here. You see them in hotels looking at the books.
But be
now it's
careful,
on computers.
Because
yeah.
if a policeman says, I'm going to book you, that means they're going to
Oh.
put you
Put your
in
name on
jail,
the wrong
perhaps.
kind of book.
Yeah.
Yeah, you better not get booked that way.
Okay.
Well, don't get in harm's way. That's the main thing. Okay, well, the government warnings is another way you can find out from the ground reports, but there are other ways, so let's read the second column.
Check government warnings. The first source to try is travel.state.gov, the U.S. State Department's website. Travel alerts tell you about short-term problems. Travel warnings are for ongoing danger. There are political ramifications for what amounts to blacklisting a country, so the government's not likely to put places on the list without good reason. The State Department suggests registering if you plan to stay in a country for more than a month. If you're going to a place experiencing civil unrest, an unstable political climate, or a natural disaster, and in a country where there are no U.S. offices such as an embassy or consulate. In that case, register at one of those offices in an adjacent country.
Well, the first thing you can do is check government warnings. I guess the government always wants to try to keep you safe, and so that's one thing you can do, see if the government issues a warning.
Well, you know, you might not be able to check the local, let's say Kenyan government, they might not. But if you're a U.S. citizen here is talking about that you should try the U.S. State Departments. So I think your own country that you come from might have a warning. If you come from a country in Asia, look at their website, as Singapore or Hong Kong or whatever, wherever you happen to be, then you check your government's warnings. And if they say citizens of this country shouldn't go there, then you can check your own government's warnings, not the local place. They might not tell you.
Right. And sometimes they won't say don't go, but sometimes they'll issue a warning and say it is a little bit risky, so be cautious.
They give you a travel alert. And they will tell you about what they call short-term problems, like there's an election today or something else. But if it's a long-term problem, then you really better not go there. But travel warnings are for ongoing danger, things that are going to keep happening there.
I like what Hazel just said before about how some government websites are not going to tell you not to go. And that's because, if we see in the next paragraph, there are political ramifications for what amounts to blacklisting a country. So if you blacklist a country, you're basically telling the people, you don't go here. You shouldn't go here. It's bad. And ramification is a consequence. It's the results of an action. So there are political consequences if you tell a person, don't go to this country.
Well, that's true. We don't really use the word in our conversation, but we read it quite a bit. What are the political ramifications of? It could be any kind of a subject. What are the political ramifications if you do something against the country right next to you? Then they might do something back against you, and it goes back and forth on political ramifications. And it seems like a lot of countries in the world have these political concerns or ramifications.
Right. I think Howie used the word consequences, which I think is a very good word. A ramification is a consequence of an action.
Right. If you do this, I'll do that, right?
There are more than just political ramifications. Last fall, they talked about economic ramifications because the world is having economic problems, so they're thinking about the economic ramifications of all these different types of decisions.
So ramifications is kind of a big official word that just means what?
Consequences.
Okay.
What will happen if you do something?
And of course, if you blacklist, if you're on somebody's Heimingdan, a blacklist, that's pretty bad, isn't it? Blacklisting a country. Because the government then they're not going to put that on there without a good reason. They're not going to just put it up there just for fun of it. If they put it up there, you better pay attention, right?
Right. So if you're a person and you're blacklisted, it means perhaps people will not hire you. If you're a country and you're blacklisted, it means people should not go there.
Might not even trade with you, right?
Right. So if you're ever on a blacklist, it's not a good thing.
Try to get off.
A more modern usage of the word blacklist now in technology is computer firewall. Sometimes your company may blacklist some websites, so you can't browse or go to certain websites during work hours. So if a company doesn't want you to check your own personal email or go to a specific website, they may blacklist those websites. You're not allowed to go to those websites.
That happens sometimes, right? Well, here in line 11, it says the State Department suggests for Americans, and every country has their own different government agency or website. They say if you plan to stay in a country for more than a month, then if you're going to be careful of this civil unrest and unstable political environment, which in other words, are they having conflicts in that country? Is it an unstable political environment or climate?
I've always wanted to go to Israel or someplace in the Middle East. And in fact, when I went to this website, the travel.state.gov, I think it's always there. The Middle East, Israel, they say the political climate, the political situation there is always at unrest. So your life could be in danger if you go to certain areas of Israel or in the Middle East.
And it says that if you do plan to go and stay for a month or more, you should register. And so that people know you're there, and if something happens, perhaps they can alert you.
Otherwise, you might just disappear. Nobody knows where you are, right? Yes, that's true. And the political climate, we talk about the climate. We think of the physical climate, the rain, the sun, the typhoon. Political climate means the way the feelings of the country are going.
Right.
Okay, so sometimes you have to register at the offices in a neighbor country. Adjacent just means next to, right?
Yes, and that's because sometimes if the country that you're going to doesn't have a embassy or consulate, like the article says, the best thing you can do is find the adjacent country, the country right next to it. And if you can register with them or check out what's going on there, their political climate, that's probably the best way to go about it.
Well, let's do a little summary of what we've learned today so far.
Well, first of all, vacations are expensive, and you might have to scrimp and save if you want to go on one.
But then you also need to do a little bit of research to be informed so that you're not headed into harm's way when you're going to a particular country for vacation.
And you also need to check your own government's warnings about those things because there are consequences.
Right. And if you know people that live there or have an opportunity, you should talk to them directly. They can give you some other warnings or tell you what to look out for.
Well, those are some pretty good precautions, I think, that we've studied today, aren't they?
Oh, definitely. Now I think I know a little bit better when I travel.
And we're going to have 2 or 3 more precautions when you come back to class tomorrow. But some of the good words that we want to learn, to know what they mean, are ramifications. But I don't think you're going to go around talking about it all the time.
Maybe not.
But it's good to know what the words mean. Are there any other words that you would like to pinpoint here today?
I underlined the word breakout. I know this is all the way back on line 4 in the first paragraph, but then when something breaks out, it means to begin suddenly or to arise suddenly. So violence breaking out, meaning that violence began suddenly.
You might be in harm's way, and in harm's way is something you often hear talking about soldiers that are going to another country, and we've got to be sure and keep our troops out of harm's way, out of danger zones. Harm's way is something you will hear a lot these days.
All right, and sometimes you'll hear the word adjacent, means just next to or beside.
That's right.
Well, if you're sitting right next to me, do I say you're sitting adjacent to me? We don't use it like that, do we?
Well, you use it when you're talking about, maps and buildings and streets, things like that.
Maybe
more like directions, aren't they?
Or objects, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Not so much people, right. We say beside. You say beside me or next to me, right. Okay, well, there's been some good words to do, and don't forget the word precaution as a caution to everybody. I would say keep working on your English, because that'll help you if you have to read some of those reports in the local papers or talk to people about what's going on. But be sure that you make informed decisions. Don't just say, well, I think it'll be all right. I haven't heard anything. Hey, find out. Be informed.
That's right. And you can remember to always check out other countries' websites. And of course, don't forget to check our own website at www.studioclassroom.com and click on the Advanced magazine. And you can check out our topic talks and even go to our English corner and leave any comments about what you thought about this day's reading so far.
And you can go there without scrimping and saving.
It's free.
Okay. So thanks for being with us today. And when you come back to class tomorrow, we'll finish some of, I guess, 3 more things that we have about travel precautions. So when you are getting ready for your holiday travel and you're thinking about where you're going to go, be sure to check out everything before you book. But if you're going someplace for this lunar holiday, I think you've already booked, because it's pretty late. People book several months in advance for this holiday.
But continue to check out the on-the-ground reports so that you know the situation and climate of that place you're going to.
And don't forget, wherever you are, you can always check with Studio Classroom online, or take your magazine with you, read it on the plane, and be sure and be with us as we have our lessons every day this month. And we finish up this great 2 New Year's months, January 1st and New Year's, and then the Lunar New Year. 2 New Years in 1 month. Isn't that great?
That's good. And when you travel, send us a postcard.
Okay. Thanks, Hazel. We'll see you then in class tomorrow. Goodbye, everyone.
Goodbye.
Bye.